The perpetrators accuse me of child molestation and rape and murder, breaking and entry, and all these kinds of other crimes via voice to skull or telepathy. That's what the perpetrators accuse me of. They're more than likely military that are accusing me. They either imply through media or they imply through telepathy. They relay messages telepathically to each other, or they just are flat out lying, and they don't this is what they do. They just if a victim is trying to defend themselves, they just totally ignore the victim. The perpetrator then the problem that I had when in the past, their faults in the past, they're over 20 years ago. One is even 30 years ago when I was a boy. Was in the past, and 30 years ago when I was a young boy, I touched my cousin's Pampers. As a teenager and in the 90s, I was peeping. I peeped somebody. Peeping Tom. It's a crime, but it's a slap on the wrist type of that was done over 20 years ago. So the perpetrators pick at these two things, and they pick at these things and they use these as interrogating tools, but telepathically and voice to skull. They take these two facts and they interrogate, and they have everybody believing otherwise, and the otherwise people, the people that read that, they are willingly ignorant, and they just read that as a fact. They say, oh, he's a this type of criminal, he's a that type. If they're interrogating me for, they do this telepathically, they interrogate me for 30 years ago, which the victim is 30 years old, and she's a relative, and she's 30 years old. The other victim is older than me, of the peeping. So when I was younger, I peeped somebody older than me. The perpetrator accuses me of other crimes I have nothing to do with. As an adult, I never slept with a minor. So they're flat out lying. And from 1998 to 2005, I used to work for the police department. So I didn't do anything wrong. I had to be on my P's and Q's. I couldn't get into any kind of trouble. From 2000, after 2005 of December, I resigned, and in 2007 they started using voice to skull, and they started attacking me with energy weapons heavily in 2008. So why did they do that? For peeping done in the 90s, over 20 years ago, or the touching my cousin's Pampers in early 80s. The perpetrators they use these facts, these old of wrongdoings or sin or stupidness of my youth, and they drag it to this. They imply that it happened, but there's no victim of there's no victims. Because the victims are over. The thing's been done in the past, so there's no victims currently. So why did they attack me why they attacked me in 2007 for stuff done in the past? Did they plot this? So it's like premeditated depopulation. The perpetrators this is the way they depopulate. And when law enforcement tries to look at the victim. They say, why are you torturing this victim? They start reading body language. They start reading the victim's body language. They start reading implications or media, and they start implying. And the law enforcement cannot read body language because they have telepathy technology, and they cannot take any implications off the media and read off these things, because these perpetrators are depopulating. And when the law enforcement says, "What are you hurting him for? What's the problem?" "Oh, he's one of these." They'll point to a crime or something that they don't have the facts straight. They don't have the victim, and they don't have the time. The time is stretched or something. So the perpetrator, he would even use the fact that I say the time is stretched as a confession. I don't confess that way. I'm documenting facts. My yes is yes, and my no is no. Anything else is from the devil. I don't have to hide. I have nothing to hide because I'm dying. I'm dying because they poked holes in my head with energy weapons. So I'm just documenting, clearing the air, that the perpetrator uses wrongdoing in the past, sin and wrongdoing, and they use those things to blackmail me. That's one of the first things they blackmail me with, via Voice of Skull. They blackmail me with touching my cousin's Pampers in the early 80s. She's 30 years old. They started interrogating me that in 2007, late October. And then when they couldn't blackmail me with the touching of the cousin's Pampers in the early 80s, they went to blackmailing my family or my friends. They started blackmailing, threatening them. So if they can't get you on something, they'll start blackmailing your family. After being tortured, I didn't even care about my family or my friends. I said, I don't care about them. This is torture. So I didn't care of that. So they went to constantly lying and constantly torturing and lying and torturing. Everybody has wrongdoings in their past, but the perpetrator likes to imply to this group that it's worse than whatever, and that is a recent time or something of that nature. All my wrongdoings are in the over 20 years ago, and I just documented. Those are possibly the two worst. Well, they're not even worse because they're like slaps on the wrist. They're not even bad. I don't have a criminal record. I'm not wanted. I don't have any warrants or anything like that. So they attacked me in 2007. They're gonna use that as a defense. Oh, he's this or that, and the two victims are supposed victims are either older than me or one of them is 30 years old. So the timing, if they accuse me of child molestation, the victims are either 30 years old or older than me. We knock out the older woman. She gets knocked out. Now the one is 30-year-old is left. Now how old am I? I'm 42 years old. Okay, you do the math, and you can see that my story lines up. I was about 10 years old. She was 1 year old or something. My story lines up from the 80s. She's now 30 years old, and she's not a victim. It was a stupid thing that a little boy did back in the early 80s. I talked to other targeted individuals. They said they do the same thing. They accuse them of the worst possible crime. And a lot of them document that they accuse them of crimes, etc. They need excuses to torture victims. In my case, they accuse me of crimes to follow me so that they can scout for women to hear them around me. That's why they follow me. They accuse me, and then they follow me, and then they scout for women around me. The conversations or remote viewing of the females. The perpetrators use wrongdoings, is my point. They take wrongdoings and because the victims don't want to speak about these wrongdoings. The reason why I'm speaking about it, because they torture me to death. They poked holes in my brains and I'm dying. So I didn't even think it was a problem. I'm just documenting because they constantly keep using this to follow me. They telepathically relay messages to one another. They read media and they follow me with the energy weapons. They torture me daily and it doesn't stop. So they're using this method to depopulate the earth. What the police department or law enforcement has to do is find out what went wrong, why they are attacking, and if they say otherwise, or they're saying, oh, because he committed a crime of child molestation, I cleared that. Okay, he committed rape and murder. Who are the victims of the rape and murder? You're not going to find any, because I never committed that crime. So they're gonna be lying about that. There's no victims. So I cleared the thing they accused me of. So the perpetrator is left with lying, and that's all. Well, the main thing is that they do is they take a fact and fabricate it. They fabricate it to media, through media. It's filtered through media, telepathy, and they also use a method where they condition a victim. They keep saying rape and murder, rape and murder, rape and murder via voice to skull. Then they hit me on my jawbone. They hit me on my jawbone every time they say that. And then when they hit me on my jawbone, this is a method they use. They'll hit me on my jawbone, and what's the first thing I'm going to think about? Rape and murder. And then at that very moment, they have some expert telepathy reading rape and murder. Oh, he raped and murdered. I read it, telepathy. So they use that method, and I put it on one of the videos. There's no victim. You got to find the victims first. You got to find the victim's age. There is no victims. That means the perpetrators are depopulating, and when they're being looked at, they will point to some horrible crime. They'll imply that the victim committed a horrible crime. This is the way the United States just depopulates. And the motives, they don't talk about their motives. Their motives are to steal money from my father's New York lottery winnings, or land that he owns, or possessions that he has, or my identity. Which, if you steal my identity, you steal all that I inherit. I can't inherit anything because they chopped up my brain tissue and I'm dying. So it leaves the money leaning towards somewhere else, because I won't enjoy the money because my brain tissue is ripped apart by Homeland chasing after women. Somebody allowed them to chase after women because they have their own motives. Is there oil in the land? I don't know, because they won't say anything. So they have motives for doing things. The police department or the FBI, they have to investigate right away the accusations and the victims. See if they have any victims, and they can't. There's no victims. In my case, there is absolutely no victims. And they gotta stop reading body language, which it can kill a person if they read body language. As they don't acknowledge the telepathic technology. They don't acknowledge voice to skull. Telepathy wise, they chopped up my brain tissue, and they involuntarily moved my body. I walk into another room, boom, I get hit. You're guilty. He's guilty. You see? Ah, you see? Boom. That's what I hear via voice of skull. He's guilty. Boom. They attack me. Voice to skull, they could say, you should brush your teeth. And I'd say, oh, that's a good idea. I didn't brush my teeth this morning. The minute I brush my teeth, boom, he's guilty. You see? He brushed his teeth. Boom. They use methods like that. And they don't acknowledge the technology being used. So the first thing you have to do is get the homeland or whoever's accusing to produce a victim. Why are you attacking him? And if they say, oh, it's because of this or that or the other, you say, where's the victim? Then you're gonna get, in my case, the homeland's gonna be caught in a lie. The number one weapon that the perpetrators use is blackmail. You cannot allow yourself to be blackmailed by the perpetrators, because they will turn you into a slave. And you can't follow any voice of skull, or because they will continue to keep blackmailing you into trafficking. The perpetrator is a trafficker. They like to traffic women to themselves and their families, and they are organized criminals because they attack me, depopulate the earth to steal from the people. Their main goal is to depopulate, to steal, and have the possessions of the people's the belongings or their land, their property belonging to their family. They want it in their family's ballpark.